Hello friends, welcome to an unusual video today. Now the first thing you may notice is that I look very different than I normally do. Number one, I have unusual glasses on, and the reason for this is that last night I actually slightly damaged my normal glasses and had to take them to a repair shop. So I'm currently wearing glasses that are my spare glasses, but that sort of make me look like I'm in the 1970s. Which actually, to be honest with you, these are actually more convenient in a way because I can see, you know, when you wear glasses and you're quite blind like I do, you don't actually see outside of the frame of the glasses, and since these are so big, I can read. It's actually more convenient, but they look ridiculous. Anyway, the second thing I wanted to tell you guys is that you will notice if you pay attention, maybe you'll see better without the glasses, that I am bigger than I am normally. Specifically, I'm fatter and more bloated than I am normally. The reason for this is because in the last couple of weeks I've been eating an unusual amount because I fasted. I'll get into the details in a little bit, but basically I fasted more than I usually do recently, and I wanted to gain back some weight, but then I came up with a plan, which is what we're going to talk about today, and I thought maybe I should gain a little bit extra weight so that it'll be slightly easier for me to get started beforehand. So I weigh, as of today, 184 pounds. Now my weight is not very stable normally because of the way I eat, which we'll get into in a little bit, but my weight usually fluctuates from about 165 pounds to 175 pounds. Usually between 167 and 173 pounds. As you guys know, I usually don't, okay, let me get into the history of it. So basically this video is about a fasting protocol that I'm about to do. I'm about to do a sort of extreme kind of fast, a long fast, longer than one I've ever done before, and I'm going to document it for you, for the viewers, not so much to learn from, but maybe to get some slight inspiration from, or to realize how easy it really is. More the latter, because I noticed that people, now a lot of my viewers are bodybuilders or interested in muscle, and this brings a whole separate issue with it when people are afraid of losing muscle, and obviously you're not going to get inspiration from me on this account because I no longer have very much muscle, although I once did, and I understand how muscle works, but that's not that important. But for the normal people that are watching me, that are not muscle aficionados, you will notice that fasting is much easier than people, people think that haven't tried it. So I want to show you guys that. Now let me tell you a little bit about my history in fasting. This is going to be a slightly longer video. I'm going to give you a lot of information about how I'm thinking about fasting and how I'm planning this fast. And then I'm going to try to make videos for you guys every day during the fast, and if not, then at least every 2 days, so that you can see visually how I'm doing and I can report to you guys qualitatively how I'm feeling. And I'll be honest with you, if I'm not feeling well, I'll tell you so. If I'm not able to focus, I'll tell you so. If I'm not able to sleep, I'll tell you so as well. And so I'll keep you guys updated on that. But before that, let me tell you a little bit about my history with fasting. Now the truth is, I actually began fasting extremely early in my life. The first time I fasted for a week straight, I was 15 years old. And I was not doing it for health purposes. It's not entirely clear why I was doing it. See, I'm naturally a person prone to obesity. My genetics make me genuinely prone to obesity. The only reason I haven't become obese in my life, I mean, I was obese many times, but I was only like 70 pounds overweight or so, which is a lot. So I weighed at my maximum fatness 240 something pounds, which is coincidentally the same weight I was at my highest muscular weight. But I was at that time completely fat. But usually in my life when I got very fat, I was about 220 pounds. As I got older, the weight would go higher because the obesity phenotype is more. It's more possible to become obese basically when you're older. But I do have obesity-related genes. Of course, as you guys know, I'm very into studying genes. And I know, for example, particularly at the FTO gene, which is the fat mass and obesity something gene, which is the gene most correlated to obesity, I have some horrible alleles that predispose me to obesity, but I also have many other alleles that do this in many different parts of my genome. So anyway, the point is, I was naturally prone to being obese when I was younger, and by the time I got to the age of 12 or 13, for various reasons, I started getting a little fatter, or chubbier, you would think chubby. And I'm a naturally very determined person, and I have strong willpower, and usually my willpower works better in short bursts than in the long term. So at one point I tried to fast for a week to see if it would reduce my body fat significantly. And I did this when I was 15, maybe 14, maybe in my late 14th year. Subsequent to that, I've lost, this is as a side note, this is not about fasting, but just so you guys know, I lost about 60 pounds. I lost 60 pounds actually specifically when I was 16 and a half or 17 years old, being the first person in my high school to ever lose that amount of weight, and I lost it in 4 months or 5 months, very rapidly through extreme self-discipline. Subsequent to that, many times in my life, I have stopped paying attention to my health or to my, I was not so much cosmetically, inclined, but more to my health, and I gained back the fat many times, and I lost it many times also. So I lost 50 pounds or 50 to 70 pounds in total 4 to 5 times in my life, other than the time I lost 70 pounds of muscle. So I have a lot of experience losing fat, basically. But anyway, the point is, leave that aside. The point is, the first time I fasted, I was 14 or 15 years old, probably 15, early 15, late 14, fasted for a week. And other than that, I fasted for days at a time, many times. But when I started getting into health and longevity, which was when I stopped arm wrestling and weightlifting competitively, which I had been doing for some time, which I stopped basically in November of 2018. Since then, I have been experimenting with fasting a lot. Specifically, for the first period, and this includes when I first began on YouTube, I was fasting for about a week every 3 months or so. Not about a week, for exactly a week every 3 months or so. During these fasts, by the way, today, guys, normally I don't take notes for my videos because I sit with my wife Lucie, and in conversation usually most of the things that matter come out. But today I'm making 3 videos for you guys, and I've taken some notes. I have some papers here just to make sure that I don't forget anything significant. So you're going to see me looking down a little bit, and that's because of that. So the first thing is about these. So I was fasting 7 days every 3 months. But in addition to that, see, I would have forgotten to mention this, I was also not eating for 21 to 23 hours a day all the time when I wasn't fasting. So I was basically eating either for a 1 to 3 hour window during the day, which really accentuated, to be honest, what it caused me to do was be very low body fat, which made these 1 week fasts very extreme. If you go to the oldest videos on my channel, maybe not the absolute oldest because of that, it depends, but you'll see in the earlier videos sometimes I was extremely low body fat, and the reason for this was because I was basically not eating for many hours during a day anyway, even when I wasn't fasting. And then during those fasts, the body fat would go so low that I would have to try to eat a lot of nuts and things like that to try to regain a little bit of fat earlier in the next 3-month phase before I fasted again. So that's what I used to do. Now, in terms of supplements, I was very cautious before. I was not as well read on the literature, and so the way I fasted was I didn't take any supplements except for magnesium. I supplemented usually with 800 milligrams of magnesium a day. I use magnesium citrate, and I recommend you don't use magnesium oxalate. There are other magnesium forms you can use also, but citrate is really great. And sometimes, very rarely, and I would only do this if I was fasting for a week, and like on the 4th or 5th day, I was often going to the sauna also, and you can imagine how you lose water and minerals and all that kind of stuff from the sauna. And during my fast, and this is another thing I should tell you guys, I usually don't lift weights except during my fast. And the reason why I lift weights during the fast is because I'm trying to send the body a signal to use other proteins instead of muscle as much as possible. And I do think that this works quite well. And why I don't lift weights during the rest of the time of the year is because I don't find it to be optimal for health. It probably is useful if you have a lot of time on your hands, but for me personally, cardiovascular exercise, specifically bike riding, and an exercise that I enjoy, which was climbing, which I can't do anymore because of the coronavirus, and also I can't bike. I'll mention this later, but anyway, so the point is I do those things preferentially. But people ask me often, well, should you lift weights for health? Well, I have a video. You guys should check it out about what is the best exercise for health. But my opinion is if you have an endless amount of time on your hands, then you should lift weights. But if you don't, then you're not going to lose that much. Mainly what you're going to lose is basically bone mineral density as you age, and a little bit of better glucose metabolism, because muscle helps you deal with glucose in your body. When you have less muscle, you're more likely to become insulin resistant in the long term. Unless, of course, you're using PEDs, in which case your muscle and lifestyle is going to make you insulin resistant, or in case you change your diet. This is the problem with weightlifting. This is one of the reasons I don't do it, is because I'm a very intense person. Once I start weightlifting, I might sneak in a few extra carbs or a little bit more protein, and all of those things can end up hurting your health more than anything else. But the weightlifting itself is positive. Anyway, this is off on a tangent. As I told you guys, it's going to be a little bit of a long video, but it's going to be informative. So I started with a week every 3 months. I was only using magnesium. I should mention another thing. I have a fasting video. It's called How to Fast. And the picture says a la Leo, which means in French like Leo. And in that video, you'll find my sleep protocol for my fast. I filmed that on one of my fasts. And basically my sleep protocol before was to use melatonin, short and long acting, which I use anyway all the time. But I use that, we can get into dosages later. And I use phosphatidylserine, which I notice and I don't really understand how this is working exactly. It may have something to do with glycine or other amino acids, but phosphatidylserine at 400 to 600 milligrams a night really helps to like calm me down and get me to sleep. And I was also using GABA at 600 milligrams, not every day during the fast. I would use it once or twice, maybe during a week-long fast. And the reason why is, as you guys know, I'm very hesitant about the GABA system, and I try to be careful with it. So why was I using a sleep protocol? Why was that the only supplements other than magnesium and sometimes salt? No, that's what I mentioned earlier. Sometimes I would use salt. So if I was going to the sauna and I was exercising a lot, sometimes I would take a little bit of salt, a pinch of salt, put it in a glass of water to make sure I stored more water in me. But usually I was just using magnesium. So I was using magnesium, salt, and then a little bit of a sleep protocol. Why was I using a sleep protocol when I wasn't taking any other supplements? Because I was very hesitant, because I didn't know the literature very well, and this is still something that everyone's learning. But the reason why is because during a fast, as I mentioned many times on my channel, and I should explain this to you guys now, during a fast, after about the first day, your body starts to get in a very strong sympathetic nervous drive. What that means is cortisol goes up, norepinephrine, noradrenaline goes up, and growth hormone also goes up, by the way. And the results of this is that, which also happens, by the way, in the sauna. These exact same things happen in the sauna as well. But this is generally what happens when sympathetic nervous tone increases. Your body has two nervous tones, by the way. My viewers know this, but just to repeat for those who don't know, there's a parasympathetic nervous tone and a sympathetic nervous tone. Parasympathetic nervous tone is called the feed or breed nervous tone. It's the relaxing nervous tone when your body is settled. When your body is not settled, when you're in fear, when your hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis is on overdrive, you develop what's called a sympathetic nervous tone, characterized by cortisol, norepinephrine, also sometimes growth hormone. And what this does basically is allow your body to be better able to be in fight or flight, right? So when you fast, your body recognizes that you're in a nutrient-deprived state. And one of the things it does a lot of things, but one of the things that we know it does is activate the sympathetic nervous tone. What that means is you'll find it much more difficult to sleep at night. Now, there's a couple of reasons. It's not just because of the sympathetic nervous tone, which makes you basically on edge, which is why I have those supplements there, but also, to be honest, it's other things as well. Like when people eat carbs, there is an impact. Now, actually, when you eat carbs, norepinephrine also increases in the body, which many people don't know. But also you have insulin release, and you have a subsequent change in your brain chemistry that makes it easier to sleep. And some people also just have a habit of eating before they sleep, like I do. Not right before, but a little bit before. And without that habit, it becomes difficult for me psychologically to realize that I should be going to sleep. So that's why I have that supplement protocol there. So that's what I used to do before. A few months ago, probably, I guess it was maybe about 3 months ago, I came to a conclusion, and I'll get into a little bit of the rationale why in a while later, which basically involves Valter Longo's research from USC. Basically, I realized that it seemed, not just his research, I'll get into the details later, but basically I switched from a 7-day fast to a 5-day fast. And instead of doing the 7-day fast every 3 months, I started doing a 5-day fast every single month. 1 month I was a little bit delayed because of the coronavirus, so I actually caught the coronavirus and was feeling very badly when I entered the fast, and later we found some research to show why that may be, thanks to a viewer of the channel. His handle is Morning Iron, and he's on the subreddit as well. But long story short, I had a very bad experience that one time. So then I ended up fasting twice in less than 2 months, a 5-day fast, which is why recently I was, feeling a little bit low energy and low body weight, and that's why I started eating a lot originally. So I was fasting 5 days a month, but I made some other changes as well. So I started eating 16 to 20 hours a day instead of 21. Sorry, not eating. I started fasting 16 to 20 hours a day. I don't call this fasting. I call this, time restricted eating, borrowing the term from Sachin Panda from the Salk Institute. Sachin Panda is the person who developed a lot of the research that shows that eating for a lower amount of time during the day is very helpful, because basically your body has circadian rhythms, and your liver and pancreas also have circadian rhythms, and they function suboptimally after about an 8-hour period, potentially less than that. Rodents show extreme benefit when they reduce their eating time period from 12 hours to 11 hours, from 11 hours to 10 hours, and Sachin hasn't researched it much past that, but basically it seems to be the less hours a day you eat, the better you, the term bodybuilder is used for this is partition your food. Basically, the better you deal with your food, the better your insulin response, the less insulin insensitivity you have, and so on. So that's the real reason I eat for such low amount of hours a day now. Originally, when I was eating 21 to 22 hours a day, when I was not eating when I was fasting 21 to 23 hours a day, it originally started because I thought that maybe I could get some benefit in terms of the longevity pathways, AMP kinase and mTOR and so on from that. I no longer believe so, but there is obviously still a benefit for the liver and for metabolism and so on. And there's also another benefit for the liver as well, which is it seems people quickly get rid of fat that's stored on their liver when they don't eat for periods of time. In fact, that's the visceral fat is the first fat that's burnt off during a fast, and it mostly happens during the first 2 days. So people can burn a lot of visceral fat off with short fasts. I'm going all over the place here, but I hope this is informative. For people who don't know much about fasting, this will be a very informative video, hopefully, and you guys will learn a lot. It won't be very cited, because a lot of you guys can look at my videos are extremely well cited, and you can find more videos. I usually mention fasting not on dedicated videos, so this is a dedicated video, so you guys can have a little bit of a discussion about it. Now, other than the 60, so basically I increased the amount of time, I increased the amount of time that I was eating. So I started fasting 5 days a month, but I increased the amount of time I was eating every day. And the reason why is I was fasting so frequently now, and I realized, I'm not really relying on those hours for the AMP kinase or mTOR activation, activation, but rather I was mainly doing it to ensure a good homeostasis in my body, good digestive health, which also affects digestive health. I highly recommend The Circadian Code by Sachin Panda book. It's a book written for a lay audience, very easy to read. You guys check it out if you want to learn about circadian eating or time-restricted eating. The point is, it's much better for the gastrointestinal system, it's for bacterial health in the microbiome, for the liver, for insulin sensitivity, for the pancreas, all that stuff. So I kept doing that, but I moved the hours. Basically, my eating window is much smaller. So I ended up fasting around 16 to 20 hours a day and fasting 5 full days a month. But I also did a few other things that I actually haven't told you guys about before. Number one, for the long-term viewers of the channel, you'll notice this. Number one, I started adding more supplements to my fast. So not for the sake of making the fast easier, just because I started realizing that it was probably not harmful to consume these supplements. Now, I wasn't consuming any supplements that had a calorie value, no calories at all, but I was still consuming a little bit, honestly, it was not so many minerals, but more antioxidants and some vitamins, some antioxidants, stuff like that during my 5-day fast, because I no longer thought that they were going to harm the fast, and I'll tell you why toward the end of the video. So I started doing that. This is just a little bit of history, but I started doing some other things that you guys don't know about as well. So because the fast was much shorter, well, number one, I started toward the end of my 7-week fast, I started taking metformin during my fast. Originally, I wasn't doing that. Metformin does a lot of complicated things in the body. We don't completely understand what it does, but one thing we know it does, to make it simple, is it activates a nutrient sensing pathway called the AMP kinase, which is a pathway that's also activated when you exercise. one of the reasons we believe that exercise is so good for health. Metformin activates this and also affects the glucose dispersal and fatty acid oxidation and all kinds of things in the body. But for the sake of fasting, metformin was interesting because using metformin, first of all, I never found any side effects from it. But what I did realize is that it was going to get me into the AMP kinase dominant pathway quicker. And it was going to help me turn off the major growth pathway of the body, mechanistic target of rapamycin, quicker. So I started putting in the metformin at a high dose, 2,000 milligrams a day, throughout the whole 5-day fast. Because, remember, now my fast is a little bit shorter. I'll get into the details a little bit later, but it's shorter and I want to activate those pathways faster. But I also did other things that I have never discussed on this channel. And the reason I haven't is I didn't want to risk anybody's health talking about more extreme things that are not well studied. But there's one thing I do that I haven't told you guys about, which is rapamycin. I take rapamycin on the first day of the extended fast, the 5-day fast. I only started this recently during my 5-day fast. Rapamycin is extremely effective at turning off mTOR. In fact, mTOR is named after rapamycin. Rapamycin is a molecule that was found on some islands that their native name is related to the word rapamycin. That's where the word came from. And basically this molecule, which was found in the soil originally, and the molecule, by the way, was really, now it was discovered, I don't want to get into too much history, it was discovered by an Indian researcher originally working for a pharmaceutical company. He's the one who popularized it in, I think, the 60s or 70s. But the person who really studied a mechanistic target of rapamycin is a gentleman named David Sabatini from MIT. He is the be-all end-all in the world of mTOR. Not a person particularly interested himself in longevity, but he's a researcher interested in mTOR. And so anyway, if you guys want to know more about rapamycin, ask me, and I'll ask me on my Q&A. I have a Q&A post right now on Instagram. I won't be answering it for a while, so you can still have time to ask questions. If you want to know about rapamycin, my opinions on it and how I use it, ask there. I'll include the couple of studies that have been done that are very interesting on humans. And basically I use a low dose rapamycin in the first day of my fast to really shut down mTOR. At the same time I'm using metformin. And those are the two things I've been using for my recent 5-day fast to accelerate it. These are like sort of fast, if you imagine PEDs for fasts, performance enhancing drugs for fast, for longevity. And so that's what I've been doing recently. And so that's what I've been doing. Now in the future, other than the fast I'm talking about right here, which is going to be an extreme fast, we're going to talk about why I'm doing it later. What I plan to do is I've changed my plan again. What I plan to do now, I feel like this 5-day fast a month is not enough. I'm a very determined person. I really want to live long. I really harmed my body in my life, and it's not just by weightlifting or taking PED use. In fact, it's much more than that. I harm my body in many ways during my lifetime, from many different kinds of molecules and food. And for that reason, I don't have health issues other than Crohn's disease, which I don't actually, to me, I don't have it. I don't have any markers for it. I don't have any symptoms. I don't have high reactive protein. I don't have anything. But I did have Crohn's disease. But other than that, I don't have anything. I don't have elevated cholesterol. I don't have an enlarged heart. I have an athletic heart, so-called, but not an enlarged heart generally. I don't have high cholesterol. I don't have any kind of health problems. And the reason I mentioned this is recently I had an interview with Boston Lloyd, and Boston Lloyd was mentioning that some people who are very obsessed with health, it tends to be because they actually have a lot of health problems. I don't have that, but I'm a very determined person, right? And I was very determined in everything in my life. When I was living a hedonistic lifestyle, and I was partying a lot, and I was living some crazy life, I was very into that. I took it further than anybody else around me. And when I was weightlifting, or when I was using PEDs, or when I was training for strength, I also was more disciplined than anybody else around me. And because I know I did all of that, and because I know I want to live a long life, especially with Lucie, and because I love life, and I love Lucie, and I want to live a long time, I'm determined to live a long time, and I have to take this very seriously. For this reason, although the 5-day fast may be working, it may be working fine, but I just feel like I'm not doing enough. So I'm not going to change the amount of hours I'm eating a day. I'm going to keep it at 16 to 20 hours of fasting a day. But what I'm planning to do is, I'm planning to fast for 5 days every month, like I have been. And this time coronavirus is not going to get me again, because I think I keep getting exposed to it all the time, because I go out all the time here. And that seems like to some degree the antibodies remain as long as you keep getting exposed to it. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not an immunologist, but I follow the research a little bit. But the point is, so hopefully the coronavirus isn't going to get me again. So I'm going to be fasting on the same date every month, consistently, 5 days. I'm going to continue to use my protocol right now, which includes rapamycin and metformin. However, I'll be adding a new molecule, which is called ACAR. I've recently made a video on ACAR. Now, ACAR is not very well studied. It is much less studied than, well, it may be, no, it's less studied than both rapamycin and metformin, but it is very interesting. ACAR has some benefits over metformin, and it also is an activator of the AMP kinase pathway, which is the nutrient sensing pathway, which is really associated with longevity, and or we believe so, at least the longevity community. So I will be using ACAR as well as metformin, just to make sure that I get into this a little bit faster, into the fasting state. I really want to ideally get into it the first day. I want the AMP kinase to be turned on, ramped up fully the first day, mTOR to be totally shut down the first day, and to speed that up as much as possible. So I'll be adding that. Other than that, I'll be keeping it at 5 days. But the new change will be every 3 months, I will go back to a 1 week long fast, but still using these molecules. So this is my new protocol for the year. So that means basically 4 times a year I will be fasting quarterly for 7 days, and for the rest of the 8 months I'll be fasting for 5 days, and for the rest of the days of the year I'll be fasting for 16 to 20 hours or so. Sometimes a little bit more than that, actually. Sometimes I go for 22 hours, but I'm not seeing it as a longevity benefit, just as a health benefit, and just to ensure the homeostasis of the body is working well. So that's what I'm going to do in the future. So this was my history of fasting, and the present and the future. The next thing I want to talk to you guys about is the rationale. So fasting, I talked to you already about the AMP kinase pathway and about the mTOR pathway. But one of the major outcomes of fasting, and there are many outcomes of it, but one of the major outcomes is autophagy. So I want to define it a little bit for you guys. I realize that many people hear the term autophagy, and many people like Greg Doucette, for example, use the term and don't really know it seems to be what it is. So just so you guys know, autophagy is a Greek word. Think of it this way: auto means self, and phagy is a common term in the medical literature. Actually, you may not realize that you've seen it, but phagy means to eat in Greek. So this means self-eating. Now, you've heard phagy other places. Like, for example, I've mentioned in my videos before hyperphagia. Hyperphagia means when, in the medical literature, when someone is very hungry from a molecule, for example. Mostly what I research is different kinds of molecules and how they impact the body and the psychology. So hyperphagia is when you're extremely hungry, right? So that results, for example, from MK677 and the other so-called growth hormone secretagogues, which are actually ghrelin receptor agonists and really ghrelin mimetics. So ghrelin is something that causes phagia in general, and too much ghrelin will cause hyperphagia. So that's one thing. Another thing is thinking about, like, in terms of phagocytes. In a cell, a phagocyte is when the cell, some cells can eat bacteria or they can eat other cells. And how they do this is basically, I don't know if you're seeing this, but they open up and they swallow in the cell. This is called a phagocyte, the place where the cell eats from. And it's a very historical thing. It existed in really primitive life forms on the earth, and it still does, and it exists throughout all of our cell biology. So the next thing, so what I wanted to say is I have a feeling that autophagy is going on pretty well after a week, but I'm not sure. The problem is it's very hard to study autophagy in humans. There is no biomarker for autophagy. So we basically don't really know what's going on. We don't know, do you need 2 weeks? Do you need a week? Do you need 5 days? Do you need 4 days? We certainly know it's very unlikely that it's happening in 2 days or 1 day. And I'll tell you why in a second. Actually, let's discuss that now. So basically, the next thing I want to talk to you about is biomarkers. So obviously, I participate in the longevity community's discussions online and different places, and I know people in the community, and everybody's been testing their biomarkers during fast. I've done it a couple of times, but not that. Sorry, that shut off. Apparently, every 30 minutes, the recording shuts off. But I've done it a few times, not that much, but I have seen consistently when I did it, the same thing that the rest of the community sees. I'm going to list how many of them on my list? 9 different biomarkers for you and describe how they change during a fast. And what I see is that by about the 3rd day of a fast, or the 4th day at a maximum. Now it depends though. It depends if you're in ketosis beforehand. So for example, many people in the longevity community will, even if they're not eating a ketogenic diet, will get into a ketogenic diet. Not many people fast as much as I do, but the ones who fast like every 6 months or whatever, a few days before the fast, they'll get into a ketogenic diet, which not only makes it easier to deal with the hunger, but it also probably, I believe, gets these biomarkers in line much quicker. So let me list these 9 biomarkers for you. The first thing is glucose obviously plummets, it shoots down. Insulin becomes almost unmeasurable. And this is, by the way, I'm talking about by the 3rd or 4th day, depending on, I think, how many carbs you've been eating lately and what kind of diet you've had right before it. But at maximum, usually the 4th day, minimum 3rd day, that's what I would say. And that's why I say that I do not believe the autophagy is going on the 2nd day, because the body hasn't reached the homeostasis. So the biomarkers are still changing a lot. They only seem to get stable around the 3rd or 4th day, and then they stay that way for the rest of the fast, which makes me think, and this is one of the reasons I started fasting for 5 days instead of a week, which made me think I'm getting enough autophagy. Then I want more autophagy more frequently, instead of getting a lot for one time period. Actually, sorry, I'm going all over the place, but let me just mention something now. What is the problem with fasting for a month once a year? Well, the problem is that there may be some drawbacks to that. So for example, we know that in mice, well, let me give you an example. For example, from a recent video about ACAR. We know that in mice or in rodents, when ACAR is given, there are a lot of neuroprotective benefits and changes in the brain that have to do with the AMP kinase, but they go away after about 2 weeks. Now that's a molecule, so it's a little bit different. But in general, what we know in rodents, when they fast for long time periods, now rodents have much faster metabolisms than us. So this is why it's one of the reasons it's very difficult to know the right time period for humans. But basically, it seems the longer rodents fast, the more likely are, or not fast, but calorically restrict especially, which is something I didn't even bring up so far. But when they do that, the more likely they are to get some kind of brain degeneration of some kind. Because at some point, the body, don't get too worried, because the body really will preserve the brain at all costs compared to anything else. So you may experience decreased bone mineral density before your brain starts becoming affected. But those are the 2 things that we want to be concerned about, is bone mineral density and the brain. And for bodybuilders and people like that, at a very long fast, 2 weeks or so, you also have to be concerned about muscle atrophy. You'll gain back the muscle very fast, so it won't really matter too much, but you will get some muscle atrophy there, and you will not get as much as you think on a shorter fast. But back to the biomarkers. So glucose plummets, insulin almost unmeasurable. Now, in terms of beta-hydroxybutyrate, which is BHB, BHB is the main biomarker used to test if someone's in ketosis. It is also the molecule that is associated with the neuroprotective effects of a ketogenic diet, which I mention often on the channel. And beta-hydroxybutyrate, obviously, by the way, it also protects the brain from like very interesting things, from like toxin-induced neuronal death, which is like from neurotoxins like MPTP. It's the main neurotoxin used for Parkinson's disease, to simulate Parkinson's disease in rodents, to kill their dopamine neurons, dopaminergic neurons in the brain. They use a toxin called MPTP. Beta-hydroxybutyrate can actually protect the rodent's brains from that. It also protects the rodent's brains from excitotoxicity, which means when some excitatory neurotransmitters like glutamine and the NMDA receptors cause neuronal death. So it's a really interesting molecule, and one day I should make a video about beta-hydroxybutyrate. If you want me to, ask a question below. Not below, on the Ask Leo post on Instagram. And if you don't have an Instagram, just make it count. Many of my clients do that. People do that. It's just easier for me, you know. I answer you guys questions with no, it doesn't bother me at all to answer these questions. I'm not like other coaches who tell you, I'm not going to tell you all of my techniques because you have to pay, you have to buy a consultation. People buy consultations all the time, and maybe I can talk more detail, more specific to people, but I tell you what I know on these videos. I don't hold anything back. So the least you guys could do is just make it easier for me to collect the questions, keep them on those Ask Leo posts. And by the way, if you ever go to my Instagram and you don't see an Ask Leo post, that means that I have just archived it, because I archive them once I make the videos so people don't ask questions later, so I can make a new post afterwards. So if you don't see one, just wait for it. Anyway, point is, if you want me to talk about beta-hydroxybutyrate, just ask there. I think it would be a great idea. Another thing is, your metabolism basically drops. Okay, your T3 drops tremendously, reverse T3 increases, the ratio between the two increases by about 5-fold. So that's one thing that changes. Gonadotropins drop as well, testosterone and so on. IGF-1 drops tremendously. This is all happening around the same time, which is really interesting. So your body develops like a kind of internal phenotype that you can see by the biomarkers. Now, one interesting thing is, I didn't mention this actually earlier. Another molecule that I will be using in my future fast, my every month 5-day fast, in addition to rapamycin, metformin, and ACAR, is allopurinol. I have recently become concerned about the effects of high uric acid levels during the fast, which is what I'm about to get at. So uric acid levels really rise up during fast, but they also rise up when people use metformin, and they also rise when people use ACAR as well. And there's various theories for this. I mean, one of them is that it may compete with BHB for receptors at the kidneys. Another one is in dealing with nucleic acid. It's not really clear what's going on, but certainly uric acid levels rise during fast and rise when the AMP kinase pathway seems to be turned on pharmacologically by either metformin or ACAR. So uric acid levels rise a lot, and that's why I'm going to be adding, in addition to rapamycin and metformin and ACAR, I'll be adding allopurinol, which is one of the main medications used to treat gout. The reason is I'm just concerned about having too high uric acid levels for too often during my life. I'm afraid of getting gout, basically. I have one friend who does have gout, and I don't mean to laugh, but the reason is gout. I like history a lot, and gout was very common back in the day, but it's actually rising at dramatic rates in the US too. Dramatic. In the last 30 years, the amount of gout in the US has maybe tripled or something like that. I don't quote me on that, but it's really rising. It's a disease that's on the rise, and it does have serious consequences. So I'm considering taking, or not considering, I will be taking allopurinol during my fast. Anyway, a couple of more things. The final two. Number 8, I want to tell you guys, blood pressure drops dramatically during a fast. So if you, for example, do have high blood pressure, you better be measuring your high blood pressure for the first 2 days, because your blood pressure is going to drop so much that you will need to stop, most likely need to stop taking your hypertensive medication or your vasodilator, whatever you're taking. And another thing is that C-reactive protein will be affected. In my case, I see C-reactive protein dropping. So that's what really happens with the biomarkers. And all this happens around the 3rd or 4th day, which means that to me it seems we're getting into the state that's important. I'm taking these biomarkers as a whole to be indicative that autophagy is happening, which means the body is starting to eat itself because of a need of proteins. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to just eat your muscle. A lot of your body is made out of proteins, including your elastic tissue, your connective tissue, your skin. All kinds of things in your body is made of protein. So your body needs to eat proteins. One of the reasons I lift weights during the fast is try to indicate to my body, can you please preserve the muscle protein, because I need that for my glucose and insulin sensitivity. But I have extra skin because I've been obese many times and I've been muscular. I still have skin on my arms. Actually, it's a funny story. You know, guys, I would be making these videos with my blazers. I have a lot of blazers. I always like to wear blazers, but I can't wear my blazers because the arms are too big. Which is funny because I had the blazers resized after I stopped lifting weights and after I stopped using hormones, but my arms stayed like 18 inches for a few months afterwards, and so all these blazers are 18 something inches made for 18-inch arms, and they don't fit me. I look ridiculous now, but anyway, side note. So this is a very long-winded video, not like my normal videos, but whatever. I hope you guys are learning some interesting things about this. Basically, the fast stabilizes around the 3rd or 4th day. So my idea is I'm taking these biomarkers as a collective to be indicative of autophagy going on. I definitely know AMP kinase and mTOR is going to be shut down because you can see the IGF-1 and other things, and the changes in the metabolic function. And so we know AMP kinase and mTOR is there. I think that autophagy is going on. Now, how much autophagy do you need? That's the thing. So it starts around the 3rd or 4th day, depending on your diet and yourself. But then it stays about stable. You could stay on your fast for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks. It stays somewhat stable. There's a homeostasis. Now, then the question is, how much of a dose do you need of that autophagy? And why do you need the autophagy? Because you basically need your body to deal with damaged cells and damaged proteins in your body. So, for example, beta amyloid in the brain of Alzheimer's disease patients is made of misfolded proteins. Potentially, your fast may be repairing some of those misfolded proteins that later in life cause dementia. There are all kinds of misfolded proteins in our bodies, and there are all kinds of cells that we want to be killed with targeted cell death, which is called cell apoptosis, which happens also during fasts. And we believe that your body will be more likely to kill cells that have damage in them or cells that have DNA that's damaged. So this is basically our repair. The idea behind fasting is this: we incur damage throughout our lives. The damage we accumulate in our body over time in the form of misfolded proteins and broken DNA and all wrongly transcribed DNA, mutated DNA, all kinds of things like that in our body. And we don't have good repair mechanisms. Unlike some other animals, like there's a certain kind of whale that seems to live for 200 to 300 years. And there are there are some animals that may live longer than that. So there are animals that have better cellular repair mechanisms than we do. But we don't. So for those of us that want to live for a very long time, because of course, why don't we? The main reason is because of this. The theory biologically, for those that are interested, basically evolution selects for people that are able to, organisms that are able to mate, and once they finish mating, the selective process isn't really there anymore. So animals that had to live longer to mate, right, are more likely to have evolution select for those that can live longer. So it's really all about when you can mate. And then generally in the body, in most organisms' bodies, there seems to be a growing overall biological state, or a rest and repair state. And basically there's a trade-off. If you're constantly growing, you're not repairing, and you're ending up incurring damage that you're not taking care of. And a lot of these repair mechanisms go on with I didn't mention earlier some of the supplements I take, not just antioxidants, but SIRT1 activators or sirtuins do a lot of these things. The point is, we want our body to go from that growing state to a repair state. And the best way seems to be to activate this is fasting. And this seems, generally, other than these molecular mechanisms like pharmacological mechanisms like rapamycin, it seems to be fasting. Now, by the way, for those of you that are bodybuilders or interested in weightlifting or getting bigger and so on, but you want to be healthy, this is why I always say that bodybuilding and weightlifting and growing bigger is fundamentally opposed to longevity. Because the body is either, and if you guys want me to get into more molecular, I'm trying not to get into too detailed because I know some people will be turned off by it, but if you want to get into the molecular mechanisms of this, or the current theories for it, ask me on my Ask Leo post on Instagram, and I'll do a video. Maybe it won't get many views, but it doesn't matter. I would like to talk about it if you guys would like to hear about it. But the point is, the body has these fundamental growth, which like the mTOR pathway, and repair and rest pathways, which is like the AMP kinase pathway. And when you turn on the growth pathway, you are directly, it's a zero-sum game in a sense. If the growth pathway is there, the other one is not there. So you're not repairing as much. And you also, in the bodybuilding and weightlifting lifestyle, are also enduring more oxidative stress. Not just because of the food that you're eating or the drugs that you're taking, but even the actual weightlifting. Many people don't realize that weightlifting causes oxidative stress. So it also, exercise, including weightlifting, also causes the AMP kinase to come on while you're there, which won't happen, of course, if you're taking insulin during the workout and eating during the workout and having these meals in between. But the point is, during the workout, you get the AMP kinase pathway, but you also get oxidative stress, and you also get all other kinds of stress that damage your body. So, for example, I've talked about it before on the channel. I won't cite it here, but I have a citation elsewhere. Doctors who specialize in renal function, which means the kidneys, nephrologists, specifically theorize that the extreme episodic hypertension that comes from weightlifting, which could be a 400 systolic blood pressure, damages the kidneys in the long term. So you keep going to lift weight. Just doing that is damaging your kidneys. And as many of you may not know, most people above the age of 60 in the US have damaged kidneys and are operating at below optimal kidney health. And the kidneys do not recover. So the longer you live, eventually you're going to need a kidney replacement if you keep messing up your kidneys. So what I'm trying to say is, you're getting more oxidative stress, you're also damaging your body more by weightlifting, all that kind of stuff. But generally, the idea of I want to grow bigger, I want to gain muscle, I want to eat a lot, even just eating protein, by the way, even protein eating a lot of protein damages the body, not just the kidneys, damages the cells in the body. It does a lot of things. Also, I can make a video on that if you're interested. Ask on the Ask Leo post. But the point, all I'm trying to get to is, that's why I say fundamentally bodybuilding and powerlifting is fundamentally opposed to longevity and health. That's the truth. And that's the truth. Now, many people can come and tell you, hey, I'm going to bodybuild in a health conscious way. You can't. You can just minimize the damage you're doing. So that's why sometimes I compliment people like Vigorous Steve, because Vigorous Steve truly is the only person I've seen in the bodybuilding world that does anything significant in terms of taking care of his health. But even then, he is trading his years in his life. He is. He probably knows that. I don't know. I'm sure he knows. He's a very intelligent man and he reads a lot. And I'm sure he knows. But he wants, at the end of the day, it's your choice too, right? So not everybody needs to live to 120 years. Some people say, I want to live 80 years. But I wanna be big while I'm living. That just matters to me, for some reason. So if that is the case, then that's fine. But for me, I do want to live to 120 years. Now I want to shoot for 120. Maybe I'll live to 100 or I'll live to 90. But or maybe I'll live less than that. Who knows? But whatever I'm gonna do, I'm gonna live longer than I was gonna live, and that's important to me. I want to live healthy. I don't want to be. My grandfather was 96 years old. His brain was totally working. At least by 94, his brain was completely fine. His brain only deteriorated, by the way, when he fell and injured his leg, really injured his leg, and they had to put him under systemic anesthesia, and that's when his brain stopped working fully. His brain was sharp at 94. His body he was still over 6 feet tall. His body was fine. I remember the last time I saw him when he was 94, before his injury. He told me, hey, punch my stomach. See, I still have abs. He really did have a firm belly. He had abdominal muscles. So there are people that live healthy, happy lives in their 90s. Why would I give up those years? At the end of the day, once you pass the age of 60 or so, you look back and say, what did I do? I didn't care about my health. I thought that life is one thing and that I need to maximize the total happiness in general, cumulatively. But it's not a cumulative maximization function that you need to deal with. Because you live, once you're past 60, the past doesn't actually exist anymore. You just have memories. And in fact, some of those memories, they cause you nostalgia and sadness. So really, at that point, I've met so many people that are older and they tell me, what does it matter what I did before? I care about now. I mean, to me, if you're not alive, you lost. That's the truth, to me, So you might not be a legend in history. Maybe you went like Napoleon died, I guess, in his 50s or so. He's a legendary historical character. But I bet you if you asked Napoleon at 70, he would have said, well, if you could have lived to 70, he would have said, I would have traded a lot of that just to be alive. These are half my life longer. So anyway, we're not going to get too much into that. But the point is, bodybuilding is against that, and this is why we fast. It's because we want to live longer, okay? But there's actually another reason people fast. I'm going off topic again, but let's make it a long video, and you guys can hopefully benefit from this. Maybe you guys can tell me if you like me rambling like this. I don't usually do it. I try to stay on topic. I talk to Lucie. I try to answer your question, but I'm rambling quite a bit. But this is what happens when you have a camera in front of you. And it's very weird, by the way, to talk to a camera. If you guys don't have YouTube channels, you'll realize it's very awkward and odd to talk to a camera. But anyway, so the point is, one last thing I want to mention, there is another reason to fast, which is not just about longevity, which is for people who are diabetics or who are obese. So the longest recorded fast in history, everybody knows about, is something like 380 days, but it was medically guided. So this gentleman who was actually Scottish, I don't remember his name, but he had vitamins and nutrients given to him during his fast throughout the time. And he fasted, he was basically an obese person, became a skinny person by the end. But there are also many examples of people fasting in history. But the point is, what I was trying to get to is about obesity and diabetics before I get into the history of it. The person who popularized this a lot, his name is Jason Funk. He's a nephrologist, a kidney doctor from Canada, who's of Asian origin. He's an excellent speaker. He really... doctors are often not academics in general, to be honest. You'll find, and not just your doctor that you go to at the hospital, or your family doctor or your internist, but even doctors that are supposed to be experts in their field, sometimes you'll notice that they don't really understand the fundamental molecular mechanisms of what's going on. Because the people who understand that are not just the chemists and the biologists, but also the MD PhDs. Usually the MD PhDs are the researchers. Sometimes MDs do research, but usually MDs are practitioners, and Jason Fung is an excellent practitioner with an amazing record of basically curing diabetes in people by giving them 2 one-week-long fasts. That's basically what he does. He takes people that are suffering from serious diabetic problems, and that are obese or even not obese, just, you know, overweight, that have a lot of visceral fat in the liver, in the pancreas, in between the organs. Visceral fat is very damaging. I can make a video on that also if you guys want to know. But the point is, these people, he gives them usually a fast for a week, and then he gives them a little bit of a break. Usually he'll make them fast, if I remember correctly, like 36 hours or something, on and off for the remaining days, and then he'll give them another 1 week fast. And usually after the second 1 week fast, they don't need insulin anymore. So this is the kind of thinking that made me go to Big Lenny and tell Big Lenny, listen, you're basically Big Lenny, if you guys want to know about why he has the gut. Everyone was asking, can you fMRI the gut to see what it is? No, you can't. Let me make it simple for you. fMRIs cannot tell people with much detail what is in a fatty liver. fMRIs are not reliable even to tell people if they have fatty liver disease or not. Okay? And neither are CT scans. So fMRIs are not going to tell you really what's going on there. The only way you're going to know is by a biopsy. And a biopsy of which tissue you're going to choose. You're going to choose the liver, you'll find out he has a fatty liver. You choose the pancreas, you'll also find out he has a fatty pancreas, I'm sure. But you'll also find that he has other things going on in the belly. You're not going to know unless you literally open his belly up and look at it. That's how medicine works. fMRIs are not some magical cure. But the point is, my educated opinion is that Lenny, and I've told this to him many times in person, and he doesn't mind me talking about this in public because, you know how Lenny is, he's open about his life. And one of the reasons I'm talking about it now is because I want people to understand, but moreover, I want you guys to go encourage Lenny, is that what Lenny has going on in his belly, now he may have some organ growth, but that is not what's causing that. He has a tremendous amount of visceral fat, intra-organ, which means on the liver, inside the liver, in between the cells of the liver, which is causing the liver to malfunction and causing, which is why he had liver failure before. I don't know if you guys know that. He has for sure fat on his pancreas, causing very much difficulty with the pancreas. His entire metabolism is malfunctioning, and he has been using growth hormone as well as MK677 consistently all the time for years on end. And before that, he was at some point obese. He's not obese anymore. If you look at him, he might be obese, you know, by his weight, but he doesn't have much fat under his skin. You can tell that for sure. The fat is still on his belly. Why is that? If you were very obese at one point, unless you really dramatically reduce your calories, visceral, and especially unless you take long breaks between eating, visceral fat won't go away that much. So you'll see a lot of people who were very fat back in the day, who were obese, and now they're skinny, but they have a bigger midsection. And the reason is not just because their stomachs grew. It's because they still have fat there. Usually, what Fung has noticed, as well as there's a lot of research supporting this, is that the sympathetic nervous tone, when it's stimulated by these extended fasts, the body preferentially first burns fat in the organs and in between the organs. And what they notice is in the first 2 days or so, almost all of the liver fat is gone. And the liver fat, for you guys that don't know, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is, not only does it lead to cirrhosis of the liver, which Lenny may actually have, because of having non-alcoholic fatty liver disease for a long time, which eventually causes steatosis of the liver, deposition of collagen in the liver, and eventually cirrhosis, which is a serious malfunctioning and basically scarred up liver. But he has non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and all of that is causing all these problems. This fat would be removed with a longer fast, and this would immediately start to reverse his diabetes and other kinds of things like that. So fasts are very useful for people that have diabetic metabolic issues, and obviously for obese people as well. So now let me talk to you about the fasting mimicking diet of Valter Longo, because basically what gave me this idea of going from a week long to 5 days a month is this idea that, look, first of all, the biomarkers seem to stabilize for me by the 3rd day, and what's the dose? How much autophagy do I need? As I told you guys, you take 2 weeks at a time. It may be harmful. It may be harming your bones. It may be going a little bit too far with the brain. It may be going a little bit too far with the heart also. You know, IGF-1 is important for heart health. It's been too long without IGF-1, maybe. So what I thought is to take more frequent doses every month and to get about 2 full days of this autophagy state. Okay, instead of, you know, so I'm doing 5 days. So the first 3 days I don't really count it, and then I think, okay, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th day, so at least the last 2 days I'm getting a dose of autophagy every month. So that's how I think of it. In my case, I'm using drugs, metformin and rapamycin, and next I'll be using ACAR, And these drugs hopefully will be getting me into the state quicker than other people. Now, the reality is I could probably make this even better by cutting out some of the fruits and vegetables, mostly vegetables that I eat 2 or 3 days before the fast, so I get into a really fat adapted state. I am fat adapted all the time to some degree, but like a totally ketogenic state. If I could get that way 2 days before my fast, I could probably improve it even better. And that's actually, while I'm talking to you guys, I'm thinking about this. I should probably do that also. But the point is, who is Valter Longo? I've mentioned Valter Longo many times on the channel. Valter Longo is a superstar. You know, if I ever thought of doing a PhD, I would wish to do it with him at USC. Valter Longo is an Italian researcher who has been researching longevity since the 90s. He has published a tremendous amount of papers on fasting with his team at USC and formerly at UCLA. He actually studied with one of the best-known researchers on longevity at UCLA, who was his, I guess his professor ahead of him in the department. I forgot his name right now, but he had an interesting study in which they put themselves in an insulated environment, a few researchers, where they grew their own food and ate a calorically restricted diet for 2 years. So he was very into researching caloric restriction. He got into fasting later, and he is the superstar of all fasting research. He's the big shot. He also has a very readable book written for the public, similar to Sachin Panda, who has a book called The Circadian Code. Valter Longo has a book called The Longevity Diet. Both of these books are made for the total public. They're not made for anyone with a background in science. They're made for people to help people. All of Valter Longo's books proceeds go to his research. He's not trying to make a buck off it. But of course, for academics, research is the way you get fame as well. So, but anyway, he seems like a genuinely good guy. I wish I could interview him one day, and I wish I could get to know him. The point is, Valter Longo basically has this. He did a lot of research on fasting. He's done a lot of research on fasting with cancer patients to improve chemotherapy. This is something I mentioned to Jerry Ward once on a video I saw of his. I commented. I rarely comment on. Well, actually, now I comment more often, but I rarely used to comment on people's videos. But I saw that Jerry Ward's mother, or his mother, I think, was suffering from cancer. Obviously, I'm not a doctor and I was not prescribing anything, but I told him, I made a comment, check out Valter Longo's research on the subject, because basically he shows that the fasting mimicking diet, which I'll get into a second, allows chemotherapy to preferentially kill the cancer cells and protect other cells in the body. Of course, Jerry did not reply to this, which I found very offensive, and I believe he blocked me from his channel, which I found even more offensive. which is funny, because I don't think much of Jerry's knowledge or anything like that, but I always found him to be an interesting character. He's a nice guy on his videos, unlike Jason Blaha. Seemed like a nice character. I also like the fact that he didn't like Jason Blaha, but it turned out he was not a very nice character, at least when I commented trying to help him. But anyway, off topic. But the point is, Valter Longo's fasting mimicking diet is basically this. He realized that if you keep protein low enough, remember, autophagy is your body trying to eat its own protein. If you keep protein low enough, what would happen is the beneficial effects of fasting, which appear to be from the mTOR and AMP kinase and autophagy and targeted cell death and all of that stuff, the good stuff, seems to still happen as long as you keep protein very low and keep the diet very low calorie. So his fasting mimicking diet has a first day of 1,100 calories, in which 25 grams of protein are used. This is an introductory day, okay? It's a 5-day diet, right? This is where I got also this 5-day from, because I saw my biomarker stabilizing 3 to 4 days, but I saw a lot of Valter Longo's research showing serious beneficial effects from 5-day fasts, and he was not even using a full fast. So first day, 1,100 calories, about 500 from not protein, for God's sake, from 500 from fruits and vegetables, complex carbohydrates, stuff like that, and about 500 from nuts and olive oil. Valter Longo is Italian. He likes a lot of olive oil. I don't like olive oil. I know that monounsaturated fats cause, basically, they're neurotoxic in the brain, just like saturated fats. Polyunsaturated fats are not. Of course, people have this other issue about polyunsaturated fats being potentially causing oxidative stress in the body. And I will make a video on this. Someone has asked on Ask Leo, and I will make probably a blog post about that. Again, the camera shut off, but I will probably make a blog post on it to deal with it comprehensively. But the point is, he advises 500 from complex carbohydrates, fruits and vegetables, and including fruits, interestingly, and then 500 from nuts as well as olive oil. And in the first day, he specifies at least 25 grams of nut-derived protein, of fruit and vegetable-derived protein. Then from day 2 to day 5, I think day 5, let's see what he does actually. No, to day 4. No, to day 5, interesting. Okay, so that's what I thought it was. So basically it's a 5-day diet, 1 day is in the truck. By the way, I've never done this diet myself. I don't feel the need to eat during the thing. But the first day, he does this 1,100 with 25 grams of protein. The other days, it's 800 calories, 400 from plants and fruits and vegetables, stuff like that, complex carbohydrates, and no grains, no simple carbohydrate grains like white rice, and then 400 from nuts and olive oil. And then he doesn't have a minimum on the protein there, but you would assume they would be trying to eat less protein, but he doesn't have a minimum on his diet. And then he does that for days 2 to 5, and then day 6 he just recommends people to getting out off the diet, to not eat animal proteins like meats or cheese or yogurt or anything like that, or milk. And he recommends to stay away from, again, those like white rice and stuff like that, processed simple carbohydrates. So I don't know why he recommends that. That part really doesn't make complete sense to me. And the way Valter Longo is this: he's very conservative, and he uses the weight of epidemiological research to make his recommendations. So he knows that the Mediterranean diet is associated with longevity, so he recommends olive oil. He doesn't want to speculate on the potential molecular mechanisms for how olive oil can help us, because we're such complex beings that even though, for example, like I said, olive oil may be neurotoxic to the brain, the monounsaturated fats are neurotoxic to the brain, but that may not matter on the whole. We're complex beings and so on. My problem with this is epidemiological data is not that useful in humans. There are too many factors to manage. I'm personally, like Valter Longo, very interested in statistics. That's what I was trained for. I've done all the courses that any PhD would take in statistics to do his research in statistics. I managed the behavioral research laboratory at the LSE. I used to design studies for other people, for other professors, and I used to manage research for my professors and so on. So I'm not an epidemiologist, that's not my specialty, but I just don't put much weight on that kind of research. Which is why I got a comment on YouTube the other day, yesterday actually, someone saying, your ideas are not backed by long-term studies in humans. Well, obviously, that's the problem. If we knew what worked in long-term studies, I mean, we know processed meats are correlated to cancer, but we don't know much else. There's a lot of things that go both ways, including, so I don't want to get into it, but obviously that's the big problem. That's why we're all working on this. If we knew, I wouldn't have to study all this stuff, and I would just be able to trust my doctor and know what would make me live longer. But I can't, and that's why I have to study it, because people don't really know. But anyway, sorry for that little rant. But the point is, so that's his diet, okay? And what's interesting about the diet is that he still has he still has quite a bit of calories. They're still eating, because we were thinking that you had to be hungry. We didn't know. Is it the stomach being stretched? Because there are stretch centers in the stomach also. Is it leptin? Is it ghrelin? Because ghrelin has a lot of effects also in the body that are protective, and so we didn't know what it was. Could you abating ghrelin a little bit and raising leptin, which, by the way, side note, leptin is neurotoxic. By the way, I'm not gonna cite this video. It's too long, and I have too many cited videos. I'm not gonna cite stuff here. Just this is a talking video. You can watch my Ask Leo type videos that have a lot of citations in them if you need the citation. But the point is, leptin is neurotoxic. We know a lot of things going on here. We didn't know what it was. But Valter Longo's research seems to indicate that you can consume, and by the way, he advises also consuming multivitamins and fish oil and so on during the fast. So it seems to indicate that you can consume these things and still have a lot of the benefits of the fast. So to me, this meant that I could add back in my antioxidant supplements, because these plants and fruits that they're eating have antioxidants also. So, because it could also be we need oxidative stress during the body, and so the body's fully reacting to it. You know what I mean? So there's that idea as well. So long story short, it seems that to me, I could add back the supplements, and I never added anything with calories, but now I'm going to start adding back also fish oil into all of my fasts, because I like fish oil, and I'll be adding it at the normal dose and everything, because it seems to me I'm fasting enough, and even if I'm blunting a tiny bit of the effects, I believe I may be undoing that just by my use of rapamycin for 1 day and the ACAR and the metformin. But beyond that, I'm just doing it so often. So we get to the end of this video, which was very long-winded, and you may be thinking, what does this have to do with your fasting experiment? So this was not my experiment. This was the future, what I'm going to do for fasting. These are my ideas behind fasting. This is why I fast in brief, non-detailed, non-cited stuff. But what am I doing right now? So basically this is what happened. I saw, first of all, the gyms in California closed again. Well, let me give you some background. I like to climb. The climbing gyms have been closed almost the whole time. I don't even know if they reopened for that brief period that gyms reopened in California, which, by the way, California is, I don't want to get into my issues with California. Thankfully, I live in Orange County now, which is a much more admirable county than LA County. So basically, gyms have been closed. I haven't been climbing. I feel horrible about it. I feel like I'm not improving my health. My bike was stolen out of my house. One of the reasons I left LA. I lived in a relatively good neighborhood in LA, but close to an area called Van Nuys, which is not like a dangerous area. Surprisingly, people tell me there are gangs there, but there are no real gangs. They're like Caucasian gangs and some minor Hispanic gang activity, but nothing like South Central or Compton or anything like that, or East LA. But somehow still, someone climbed over my gate, took my bike, unlocked my gate, and left it while I was home during the coronavirus, which is embarrassing to say the least. And I didn't even have the bike out that long. It was like a couple of days. So I lost my bike. I haven't bought another bike because I've been trying to, like, you know, when I was much younger, I used to spend a lot of money, and I try to now conserve my money a little bit more. I'm not naturally a stingy person, but I try to be. So I'm trying to save a little bit and earn more from my strategy consulting work, and then buy a better bike than I last had, so I don't feel overall negative about it. So with a bike, you have really influences how much you enjoy the riding. So I haven't been biking. The gyms are closed. I haven't been moving that much, because this is another shocking thing, is that I went to play with my dog a few weeks ago, and I moved very suddenly, and I've never mentioned this to you guys, but because I had high C-reactive protein for a long time, because of the inflammatory state of my body is naturally prone to an inflammatory state. That's how I got Crohn's disease. And because of that, I had a lot of degeneration of my joints, especially while I was still weightlifting, and especially while I was still taking PEDs. So mainly but not just when I was weightlifting. So my knees have some degeneration in the collagen in them. And I knew about this for years. I did some x-rays, and I knew about what's going on. They're not that bad, but that's why, for example, I stopped powerlifting at some point, because by the age of 21, I started to have knee issues. So I couldn't continue powerlifting. So I only actually deadlifted, and I didn't even squat once. I deadlifted one time during my whole arm wrestling PED use time period, which is the only time I used PEDs for more than 2 months, which I used it for like 2 years and a half. I deadlifted once. I didn't work out my legs ever the whole time, because I was so concerned about my knees, deteriorating. And the one time I deadlifted, I think something near 600, which is why people commenting on the Jason Blaha video that I had, saying Jason Blaha is really strong, which I think, by the way, I honestly think it's Jason Blaha commenting because he has different sock accounts. It's so clear on his own page. You see the same people commenting over and over, and they have like ethnic names, and it's so obvious. Anyone that follows Jason Blaha knows this, but he commented, or somebody commented on my video a couple of times saying, you gotta respect Jason, even if he's a liar, and even if he's not a nice person, and even if he's unethical and rude to everybody that comments on his page, and money driven, whatever else he is, he's strong. And I was like, no, he's not strong, because I didn't tell them this in the comment, because I didn't want to seem like I'm bragging. I was like, I didn't work out my legs for 10 years almost, and I deadlifted once, and it was almost 600 pounds. The guy's strongest lift is his deadlift, and he deadlifts for like I don't know what he does, 650 now, after 8 years straight of being on PEDs and being on YouTube. And he's money driven. He says the reason I make YouTube videos is because of money. And he says if I get stronger, I'll get more outreach. And he used to say in his videos, I've been watching him since 2012. I find him very entertaining. Originally I thought he was respectable, but then I found out he's entertaining. But the point is, he always says, I should get fit, I'm gonna cut to improve my outreach, I want to look better on my channel so I can get more outreach. And now, by the way, he works out without a shirt on. So clearly, in his mind, he used to take all kinds of stuff. This guy admitted before to taking thyroid while he's on YouTube, to taking growth hormone secretagogue, something like that, to taking grams of gear, and he looked like nothing. So now he looks actually a little bit better than he was younger. So I know this guy is full PED use. He's been doing it for 8 years straight, and his deadlift has only improved by a little bit. He's basically anatomically built. I know this is really off topic, but it's funny to me. I hope it's funny to some of you. He's anatomically built to deadlift. He has like long arms. He's short. He has short legs. Well, actually, short legs wouldn't help, but he does seem to have short legs, which doesn't really make sense. But either way, he's successful at deadlifting naturally. He always had a high deadlift. He has a really mediocre, or actually bad, squat for someone who does it as long as he does. Because, by the way, normal people, if you start weightlifting, unless you're really bad at knowing how to squat, you should be able to squat 405 in a year, even if you're not powerlifting. And if you do powerlift with Westside Barbell, you will squat 405 in a year, no matter what, even if you start with 100. It's very easy. I mean, I squatted 405 the first time I was probably 16. I'm not strong. I'm not gifted to be strong at all. At all. None of my genes show that, and I know that personally. So so it was not. Sorry about that, guys. That was my friend Roger Stone. I gotta call them back. But anyway, the point is, I was not strong naturally. This was really off topic. Now the phone call sort of distracted me. But the point is, Jason Blaha is not strong. That doing 650 is not. Anyway, the point is, I had issues with my knees, and a couple of weeks ago, I was at the park playing with my dog. I got up really suddenly, and something happened to my knee. I overextended it or something like that, and I could not walk. I had to get crutches for 2 days. And I was gonna go check it out with an fMRI, and I booked an appointment, but then I realized there's nothing they can do. I know it's a meniscus tear, and there's nothing they can do. If they shave your meniscus down, you get arthritis. It turned out that doesn't work. I researched it myself to get into it, but there's really nothing they can do. I mean, I could get like some kind of injections into the knee, like PRP injections or something like that, but to be honest, they're very costly. The good ones are very costly. This is actually a big scam that they do in LA. I don't know if they do it around the country, but they have these, like Joe Rogan, for example, recommends a place in Santa Monica that charges like $8,000 per session of injections for a joint. Ridiculous. The stuff itself doesn't cost more than $200. Not even that. It costs like $50. Let me tell you. So, but I'm not comfortable injecting into my knee, so I don't know what to do. Either I get ripped off by these people, or anyway, long story short, basically I hurt my knee. So long story short, even though Jason Blaha sucks and he's not good at lifting weights, I have not been lifting weights or doing any kind of exercise for a while. So this inspired recently. My idea is that I feel like I'm going behind. I'm not doing much productive, and I thought, you know what? And then this is what happened. Vigorous Steve, who I admire and like a lot, I saw one of his videos, which is because when I was talking to him, he had fasted already a few days in the last interview, which is coming out tomorrow actually. So when I spoke to him, he told me that he was fasting his regular fast, but he was doing a week, he told me. But then he made a video saying he did for 12 days. Now he doesn't water fast. He does eat some kind of thing. I think it's fiber, if I recall correctly. He's eating fiber, which is interesting. You know, see, everything Steve does has some rationale to it, which is unlike any other bodybuilding coach that I know of. Everybody else, there could be something. Some things don't make sense. But anyway, the point is, Vigorous Steve did a 12-day fast, and I said, wait a minute, I've been fasting since I was 15 years old, and I've never done more than 7 days. And there's a lot of people in history in the 20th century that did 40 days that were accounted for. Recently, there have been people in the longevity community that have done 3 weeks or 4, or they usually go to fasting clinics, which basically they don't do anything. They don't even take vitamins or minerals, by the way. They just make sure that they don't die, and you have support because everybody else there is fasting. But you don't need that support. I mean, really, this is for weak-spirited people. You really don't need. You do maybe. No. Don't get me wrong. On your first few fasts, see, you adapt over time, even mentally. It gets way easier. Now, with that said, I've never fasted over a week, so I don't know. Maybe you need support after a week, which is why I'm doing this. So my point is, like, if I'm somebody who's been fasting since I was 15, and I'm the one who fasts every month now, and I've never fasted more than a week, I've never fasted more than 7 days. I thought this is a little ridiculous, and I thought I should take Vigorous Steve as inspiration, and I should fast and do an extended fast of some kind. Now, I'm not gonna say how many days I'm gonna do it. I'm definitely gonna do more than 7 days, but I don't know how many days I'm gonna do. And basically, I'm gonna do it as long as I feel I'm not damaging my body in some way. And as long as, you know, I don't have that much work demand. My main work, by the way, is strategy consulting. I have a small strategy consulting firm where I do independent work, mostly with long-term clients that I've had for a very long time. But my workload is not that high right now in general. I don't feel too concerned about having less cognitive, because that's what's going to happen. The words are going to come slower to me. I'm going to be less mentally aware. I'm aware of that. It happens even at the end of 7 days, especially when you're going to the sauna and bike riding a lot. This accelerates everything. But point is, I'm not too concerned. I think it's a good time to try it. Now, I'm not doing this for health reasons. Let me be clear. It's mostly a challenge, and so that I can say I did it. Because I can't be, you know, the guy who fasts every month and stuff, and then I meet people randomly who have fasted way longer than me. It's not normal. I should be able to, and this is healthy competition, right? So I should be able to have fasted at least a certain amount of time where I can meet, and I don't meet people that fasted longer than me. You know what I mean? So basically, I want to start fasting. I started today. My last meal was at actually 6:30 in the morning. I never eat in the morning, but I decided to eat in the morning so that I would reach a full day in the morning, so that for some reason I find this a little bit preferable. The day that you decide to end your fast, you feel like you don't want to wait till nighttime. Even though I always do, but it's a little bit annoying. So I thought I'll start it like that. So today is Monday. I started today. It's the 20th of July, I think. 20th of July. And I will be fasting for over 7 days. I'm going to try to make a short video every day. There will not be like this video, where I'll just tell you how I'm feeling, and you know, I'm used to it, but I'll report to you guys how I feel. Now, I will tell you one thing. The first 4 or 5 days will be easier for me than anybody else watching this, mostly because I'm used to doing it. The more you do it, meaning even if you do it 4 times a year, it gets way easier. In my opinion, by the 4th or 5th fast you've done for a week or so, it dramatically gets easier. It's incomparable. So every time it gets way easier for the first few days. But then by the 5th and let me tell you some background also, or maybe actually I'll leave that for the next few videos. I'll tell you in each video what you're supposed to expect with that day, because each day is different a little bit. Mainly the second and third days, or the first and second day are one way, than the other days. So basically, it's going to be a little bit easier for me than you guys because I'm used to doing it, but it's also going to be a little bit harder for me than you guys because I am not in a ketogenic diet. In fact, I ate a lot of carbs, which is how I ended up so bloated, and I took a lot of salt. So I'm the opposite of ketogenic diet right now. For the last few days, I built this up a little bit so that I could, I wouldn't have too hard of a time in terms of the length of the diet, because that's when it becomes an issue. After a week or so, you start to become, maybe you're losing too much fat or stuff like that. If I was still 167, I don't have that much fat I can lose, and that becomes a concern, right? Because if you have no fat that you can lose, then where's your energy coming from? This becomes a serious issue. It's not just autophagy at that point. So this is basically, let me see if I've missed anything here. Yeah, that's all. So basically, and this time I'm going to be using my full supplement protocol, including everything except the allopurinol. I haven't gotten my hands on that yet, but everything else I'll be using. And I'll also be using fish oil. The only supplements I will not be taking are probiotics, because I don't see that as very useful at this point. Although it could be, to be honest. I don't really know. The microbiome is not very well understood. So this is the end of my video. For those of you that stuck around to the end of the video, congratulations. I realize this is the longest video I've ever made on YouTube, especially by myself, but even the longest with Lucie in it. And so it must have been really boring. Let me know if it wasn't boring. I would be surprised. But what I noticed is that there are really just like 200 or 300 people that watch my real videos, which is really annoying actually, because a lot of people actually watch the podcast, and now people actually watch them regularly. Like there's some, it's not just, before it was okay, people would see there's an interesting person, they came. Now it's like there are people that watch the Live Long podcast, but don't watch any of the informative videos on the channel. And I think that they benefit from the podcast, that I say something in the podcast. When I do say something in the podcast, it's just because I'm trying to communicate it to the other person. It's not because I'm trying to be informative, So you guys, the ones that do watch this, I think there's only like 200 or 300 of you. I hope it will grow with time. Obviously, it will always be a small group because people are not interested that much in learning detailed things. Maybe one day I'll make more basic videos for other people. To me, this fasting video, for example, is a little bit of a basic video, but still, it won't get watched because of its length probably. But the other videos, they're not very basic. I try to go into the research as much as I can, and I present it in as much detail as I can, so that people can follow with the rationale fully. And I include citations throughout. Usually, literally, the citation comes up when I mention the topic, or the subject, and it's directly say, like, if you open that paper, you find the experimental or research evidence, or you find rarely a citation to another paper where the evidence actually is. But usually, it's actually the paper where the evidence comes from. So the point is, very few people watch my videos anyway, but hopefully you guys, the 200 or 300 of you, do watch this video. Sorry guys, now the battery finished. So earlier it was every 30 minutes. The point is, anyway, I don't want to take too long now. The point is, I finished my video. Every day or every 2 days, I'm going to give you guys a short update, tell you how I feel, tell you what to expect during that phase. I'll keep in mind the fact that I'm a bit used to it. I'll tell you guys how it felt when I first did it. I'll try to make this as emotionally informative or like subjectively, qualitatively informative as possible, so you guys know what to expect during a fast. And then more important, I don't expect any of you to fast more than a week. After that point, what I'm going to promise to you is I'm going to fast as long as necessary, or not as necessary, as long as I can, until I feel actually concerned about damage going on, which will probably happen because I will end up becoming concerned about brain damage. But so that's what I'm gonna do. That's my promise to you. It's gonna be a fast. This is called the Leo Rex Fasting Experiment, and there's gonna be a series on the channel, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And if you have any questions, ask down below, and I appreciate your support. And after the 7th day, I'm gonna need you guys to send me supportive messages as well, so it should be interesting. Also, I'll probably post on the Reddit about this, and we'll have other people fasting during this time as well, so maybe if other people fast at the same time, they can support each other as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.